The late afternoon sun slid low over the acacia plains, spilling gold across the tall grass. Ranger Alex drove slowly along the dirt track, the hum of the engine a quiet rhythm against the wind. He had been patrolling this stretch of land for nearly 10 years, yet today felt heavier, quieter, as if the savannah itself was holding its breath. The radio crackled softly, then fell silent again. No poacher activity, no reports. Only the long horizon and the steady beating of his heart. He adjusted his rearview mirror, catching the reflection of a sky smeared in orange and rose. His eyes were tired, but peaceful. Since that day, years ago when a wounded lioness had appeared near his cabin carrying her dying cub, he had learned that miracles could wear claws and teeth. He had saved the little one, stitched its shoulder, and watched the lioness vanish into the tall grass with nothing more than a lingering look of recognition. That moment had never left him. A distant roar rolled through the air, low and resonant. Alex paused. The sound vibrated through the truck's frame and into his chest. It wasn't the territorial roar of combat. It was shorter, softer, almost searching. He frowned, grabbed his binoculars, and stepped out into the heat-hazed silence. Another roar followed, closer. The horizon shimmered, and then a figure emerged from the tall grass. A full-grown male lion, mane glinting copper under the dying sun. Alex froze. The lion's pace was steady, deliberate, its golden eyes locked on him with unnerving focus. He felt his pulse quicken. He knew that face, that scar along the right shoulder. It was the same mark he had once stitched with trembling hands in his cabin years before, on the cub. The realization hit him like lightning. The cub had survived and grown into this magnificent beast standing before him. Alex whispered, half to himself, "It can't be." The lion halted several paces away. Its chest rose and fell slowly, tail twitching in the dust. For a long, trembling moment, neither of them moved. Then the lion lowered its head, not in aggression but in what looked almost like acknowledgement. A deep, guttural sound rumbled from its throat, vibrating through the ground. Alex could feel it in his boots, in his bones. He slowly raised his empty hands, voice calm. "Hey there, it's okay." The lion took a step closer, then turned slightly, glancing over its shoulder into the distance before looking back at him. It gave a soft, throaty grunt, short, deliberate. It was trying to say something. Alex's instincts warred with reason. Every ranger's training screamed not to follow. But something about the lion's body language was urgent yet trusting. The same quiet intelligence he had seen years ago in that cub's eyes was now looking back at him, grown, powerful, but familiar. He hesitated only a moment more before whispering, "Show me." The lion turned and began walking toward the deeper savannah, stopping every few steps to look back. The message was clear. Alex grabbed his canteen and rifle, not as a weapon, but as precaution, and followed. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of earth and rain. As the last light faded, the plains transformed into amber shadows. The lion's silhouette moved ahead, its mane flickering like fire in the dusk. Each step felt like crossing into another world, a place where memory, instinct, and gratitude lived side by side. Some bonds are never forgotten, not even in the wild. The sun was gone now, leaving only a wash of violet and fading gold behind the acacias. Alex followed the lion through the dimming light, each step crunching softly over dry earth. The savannah after dusk had its own pulse, the hum of insects rising like a steady breath, the distant calls of night birds echoing between the trees. Ahead, the lion moved with slow purpose, its powerful shoulders rippling under its mane, never once glancing back for long. It expected to be followed. Alex adjusted the strap of his rifle and kept his distance, roughly 10 meters behind. Every instinct screamed how reckless this was. But deeper than fear was a quiet certainty, a pull older than reason, the feeling that he owed this animal something and that this moment was not an accident. He thought of the cub he had once held, tiny paws trembling, eyes cloudy with fever. He remembered the long night in the cabin, the smell of antiseptic mixing with blood and dust, the lioness pacing outside in the shadows as if praying. That night had changed him. It had blurred the fragile line between protector and participant in the wild stories. And now, years later, the story had come back for him. The lion stopped suddenly. Its tail swished, ears twitching. Alex froze, scanning the horizon. At first, he saw nothing, just the rippling grass and the distant shape of a termite mound. Then came the faintest sound, so soft it could have been the wind. A low, broken growl followed by a whimper. It was coming from somewhere ahead, beyond a line of fallen acacias. The lion looked back at him, its eyes reflecting the faint starlight. It let out a short, muted roar, not a threat but a call. Alex's heart tightened. "All right, I'm coming," he murmured. They moved again, descending into a shallow depression where the grass grew tangled and the air smelled of damp soil. The sounds grew clearer, labored breathing, soft grunts of pain. And then Alex saw her, the lioness, lying partly beneath a fallen tree trunk. Her flank rose and fell in ragged rhythm, her side stained dark near a deep gash. Alex felt the air leave his lungs. It was her, the same lioness who had once brought him her cub, the same eyes though dulled by exhaustion. The male lion circled her, sniffing gently, releasing low murmurs like comfort. Alex crouched slowly, keeping his movements measured. "Easy now," he said softly. The male turned toward him, tension rippling through its muscles. Their eyes met. "Let me help her," Alex whispered. For a long heartbeat, the lion did not move. Then it stepped aside, positioning itself between the hyena-scented breeze and the fallen tree, its body forming a living wall of protection. Alex dropped to his knees beside the lioness. The bark of the fallen trunk had trapped her hind leg. The wound near her ribs wasn't fresh, perhaps a day old, but it was festering. He needed to free her before the infection spread. He ran his hands along the coarse bark, testing where the trunk had split. It was heavy, far too heavy to move alone. He looked back toward the male lion. "You brought me here because you knew I could help." His voice trembled with something between awe and fear. "But I'll need your strength too." The lion tilted its head as though listening. Alex found a sturdy branch nearby and wedged it beneath the trunk, forming a lever. He pushed down, straining with every muscle in his arms. The wood groaned, shifted slightly, then held. Not enough. Sweat rolled down his temple. He pressed harder, the ground biting into his boots. The lion stepped forward. For a moment, man and beast were side by side, both grunting against the weight of nature itself, one with muscle and claw, the other with will and hope. The trunk shifted again, then lifted just enough for the lioness to drag her leg free. The male roared triumphantly, a thunder that rolled through the hollow. Alex fell backward, breathless, staring at the pair under the silvering sky. The lioness blinked once, weakly, her gaze meeting his for the briefest second, recognition glimmering through the haze of pain. And as Alex reached for his first aid kit, he realized this wasn't just another rescue. This was the return of a promise he never thought would come due. Night crept in softly, and the stars emerged one by one above the dark canopy of acacias. The savannah had transformed into a world of muted silhouettes, where every shape whispered movement and intent. The male lion lay near the fallen trunk, eyes glinting faintly in the starlight, while the wounded lioness rested beside him, her breath slow but steadier now. Alex worked quietly, cleaning the wound with antiseptic from his kit, whispering calm words he knew the animals didn't understand, yet somehow they seemed to. The lioness didn't flinch under his touch. The male simply watched, muscles taut, head low, every breath a warning and a promise at once. He tore a strip from his shirt, pressing it gently against the wound. The lioness exhaled, a deep sigh that ruffled the grass. "Hang in there, girl," Alex murmured. "You're stronger than this." For a long while, the only sounds were the hiss of insects and the slow rhythm of his own breathing. Then, in the distance, came an echo, a single, haunting cry of a hyena. The male lion's head snapped up instantly. His eyes blazed amber again, scanning the horizon. Alex froze, the cloth still in his hand. More calls followed, 2, then 3. The same clan that had attacked before. The sound carried like laughter, sharp and cruel, rolling closer through the night. The male rose to his feet, mane bristling, a living wall of defiance. Alex knew what was coming. "Not again," he whispered. He grabbed his flashlight, flicked it on, and scanned the distance. Shadows moved in the tall grass, low, slinking, deliberate. The hyenas had smelled blood. Alex's throat went dry. He had a flare gun in the jeep, but it was too far. Here there was only the lion, the wounded mother, and him. The air turned electric, vibrating with the tension of predators measuring each other. The first hyena appeared, grinning grotesquely in the light, its eyes gleaming. It barked, a harsh, taunting sound. Two more followed. The male lion roared, a thunderous bellow that rolled over the plains, shaking the ground beneath Alex's knees. The hyenas hesitated, backing off, but not retreating. Alex's pulse hammered. He felt utterly helpless, unarmed, outnumbered, caught between courage and fear. The lion turned its head slightly toward him, as if checking that he was still there. It was the strangest sensation, to be counted as part of the pride, even for a heartbeat. Then the lion lunged. The clash was chaos, snarls, dust, flashes of teeth. The hyenas tried to circle, yipping in high, frantic tones. The lion's power was terrifying and beautiful at once, each movement fluid, decisive. He struck one hyena aside, jaws clamping on another's shoulder, forcing it down with raw strength. Alex wanted to look away but couldn't. He was watching the law of nature rewritten, not predator and prey, but defender and ally. Still, numbers began to press. The lion stumbled briefly, sides heaving, blood streaking his mane. Alex clenched his fists, desperate to help. He grabbed a stone and hurled it into the dark, shouting to draw attention. It worked, for a second. A hyena turned toward him, teeth bared. But before it could spring, the lion was there again. A blur of fury and grace, cutting off the attack with a single resounding strike. The hyenas finally broke formation, retreating with howls that faded into the distance. Silence returned, heavy and trembling. The lion stood over them all, chest rising and falling, his breath misting in the cold night. Alex stared, overwhelmed. "Oh, you saved her," he whispered. "You saved both of us." The great beast turned its head, eyes meeting his, steady, knowing, almost human. Then it lowered itself beside the lioness again, pressing its head gently against hers, as if assuring her that all was well. And in that quiet moment beneath the stars, Alex realized that the bond he had forged years ago had not only survived, it had evolved into something far greater, a circle of trust written in instinct, sacrifice, and memory. The stars above the savannah burned cold and countless, scattering light over the stillness that followed the fight. The air smelled of dust, sweat, and distant rain. Alex sat near the fallen trunk, his hands trembling slightly as he rewrapped the lioness's wound. Every so often, he looked up to see the male lion pacing in wide arcs around them, his mane brushing the tall grass, eyes gleaming like molten gold. It was strange how quiet everything had become. No wind, no crickets, only the faint rhythm of the lioness's breathing and the distant echo of something wild and eternal. Alex could feel exhaustion pulling at him, but he forced himself to stay alert. He had seen enough nights in the bush to know that silence rarely meant safety. The lion stopped pacing and settled a few feet away from him, lowering its massive frame onto the grass. Its tail twitched softly, the rise and fall of its chest almost in sync with Alex's. It was a rhythm of survival, man and beast breathing the same night air. He whispered into the dark, "You knew I'd come, didn't you?" The lion's head tilted slightly, as if the question meant something. Alex reached into his pocket and pulled out the small metal tag he always carried, the one engraved with the date he had saved the cub years ago. He rubbed it between his fingers, thinking about how many times he had considered that memory a once-in-a-lifetime miracle. Yet here he was, living its echo. He looked toward the lioness again. Her sides rose and fell in a slow, fragile rhythm, her tail flicking weakly. The wound was beginning to clot. He whispered, "You're going to make it, girl." A low rumble came from the male. Not a roar, not a growl, but something deeper, a vibration that seemed to settle the air. It was gratitude, or maybe a warning to the world not to come closer. Alex couldn't tell the difference anymore. Time blurred. The moon climbed higher, painting the savannah in silver. Alex dozed for moments at a time, head nodding forward, until a faint sound woke him, the soft crunch of footsteps on dry soil. His pulse quickened. He turned the flashlight toward the sound, but before the beam caught anything, the lion was already standing, shoulders squared, muscles alive. Two shapes froze at the edge of the light, a pair of jackals, cautious and hungry. The lion didn't move, only stared. The jackals hesitated, then melted back into the darkness, their courage evaporating under that gaze. Alex exhaled slowly. "You really are the king out here," he murmured. The lion turned its head toward him for a brief second, then resumed its silent patrol, as if acknowledging the comment. Hours passed like this, fragments of calm pierced by tiny flares of tension. Alex's mind drifted through exhaustion and awe. Every so often, the male lion would pause beside him, close enough that Alex could feel the warmth of its breath. And each time he resisted the instinct to fear. It wasn't a hunter standing there, it was a guardian. As dawn began to tease the horizon, the color of the world shifted again. The eastern sky bled orange through the scattered trees, and the long shadows softened. The lioness stirred, blinking against the growing light. The male padded over to her side and nuzzled her gently, a quiet reunion that filled the air with something wordless and sacred. Alex stood, stretching his sore legs. "Looks like you made it through the night," he said softly, mostly to himself. The lion turned back once more, eyes glowing in the half-light. Alex could have sworn there was understanding there, a silent promise that this story wasn't finished yet. And as the first birds began to sing, he realized the dawn was not just for them, it was for him too. The savannah was waking again, and so was the bond that time had merely paused. The first rays of morning touched the horizon like fingers of gold brushing across the plains. The savannah glowed, grass tipped with dew, air trembling with the hum of awakening life. After the night's terror, the world seemed reborn. Alex squinted against the light, his clothes stiff with dust and dried sweat. He had barely slept, yet he felt strangely awake, carried by a quiet sense of purpose. The lioness lifted her head for the first time, eyes blinking open against the brightness. Her breathing was steadier, the fever's edge softened. "Easy now," Alex whispered, kneeling beside her. He drizzled a few drops of water onto his hand and let her lick it. Her tongue was rough, warm, alive. The male lion stood close, towering silently above them, not pacing anymore, just watching, the faint morning wind ruffling his mane. Alex's voice trembled as he said, "You remember me, don't you?" He knew it was foolish to speak to them as if they understood, but something about their eyes made him believe they did. The male's gaze was steady, deep and unblinking. For a brief, dizzying second, Alex thought he saw recognition flicker there. The same quiet intelligence he'd once seen when that tiny cub, the lion's offspring, had first reached out a trembling paw toward his arm years ago. Now the cub was gone, grown, perhaps wandering somewhere beyond the horizon. But the bond remained. The sun climbed higher, painting everything in a pale, forgiving warmth. The scent of the air changed, from cool night soil to dry earth and acacia resin. Life resumed its rhythm. Birds swooped low. Insects buzzed around the wounds Alex had cleaned. The lioness tried to rise and faltered. Her leg trembled violently. Alex moved to support her, pressing gently against her shoulder. "Not yet. Give it time." The lion stepped closer. For a heartbeat, Alex felt the deep vibration of a low growl rumble through the air, not of anger, but of instinct. He froze, eyes on the lion's massive paws. Then the beast stopped, standing just close enough that Alex could feel the heat of its breath. It looked down at the lioness, then at him, and finally lowered its head, slowly, almost ceremonially. The gesture stole Alex's breath. It wasn't submission, it was acknowledgement. He whispered, "You trust me." The lion blinked once, and that was answer enough. Hours later, Alex's radio crackled for the first time since the previous evening. Static filled the air before a voice broke through, distant, worried. "Ranger base to patrol Unit 3. Alex, do you copy?" He fumbled for the device, pressing the button. "Copy, I'm here. Had some complications. Your tracker went dead. We thought..." The voice paused, relief flooding in. "Are you all right?" Alex looked at the lions, the male standing tall, the lioness resting against the trunk, breathing steadily now. "Yeah," he said quietly, "I'm all right. But I'm not alone." There was confusion on the other end. "What do you mean, not alone?" He smiled faintly. "I'll explain later. Just send a medical unit to my coordinates and bring the lifting equipment. We've got one more life to save." The voice hesitated. "You're helping an animal again, aren't you?" Alex looked toward the lioness, whose amber eyes followed his every movement. "Something like that," he said. When he turned off the radio, the lion huffed softly, almost as if it understood. Alex chuckled under his breath. "Don't worry, I'll make sure she's okay." The male lion's ears flicked, tail swaying once. It looked toward the distant horizon, where the wind carried the promise of another hunt, another day. Alex watched as the golden light climbed higher, washing everything clean. He knew deep down that this was not the end, that what began years ago in the fragile act of saving a cub had come full circle. The lion had remembered, and the man had learned that kindness, once given, never truly fades. It only waits to return. By the time the rescue team arrived, the sun stood high and merciless over the savannah. Dust rose behind the jeep tires as two rangers and a veterinarian stepped out, shielding their eyes. They froze when they saw Alex, alive, bruised, and surrounded by lions. The male stood between him and the new arrivals, a towering golden wall of instinct and authority. The lioness, still weak but improving, lifted her head slightly. "Easy," Alex said quickly, raising a hand. "Don't startle him. They're not here to harm you." The lion's muscles rippled as it shifted, tail flicking once in warning. One of the rangers whispered, "Is he protecting you?" Alex nodded slowly. He remembers. The veterinarian opened his case with careful movements, retrieving a tranquilizer dart just in case. Alex stopped him with a glance. "No darts. Not yet. Trust me, they'll let us work." He approached the lioness, moving low and deliberate, every step measured. The male watched but didn't interfere. Alex knelt, checking the wound. Clean, no infection. "You're a fighter," he murmured. "Both of you are." The veterinarian crouched beside him, eyes wide. "She's stable," he whispered. "You did this alone?" "Not alone," Alex said softly, glancing at the lion. The team set up a small shade tarp and prepared fluids for the lioness. The lions tolerated it all, uneasy, alert, but calm enough for the work to continue. It was as if they understood this was part of the ritual of survival. When the lioness finally drank from the offered bowl of water, Alex felt something break loose inside him, relief, awe, gratitude, all tangled into one. He had seen countless rescues, countless recoveries, but never one like this. This one felt ancient, like a promise kept through time. Hours passed, and the team packed up, preparing to leave the pair in peace. The lions would heal better here, among the whispers of the wild. Alex gave his final instructions. "We'll monitor them from a distance. No interference unless she worsens." The others agreed, but before he stepped back into the jeep, Alex turned once more toward the male lion. The two locked eyes across the heat-blurred air. The lion's mane stirred in the wind, his expression unreadable. Yet there was something almost solemn in it, a farewell carved in silence. Alex lifted his hand slowly, palm outward. A human gesture, but one that seemed to cross the impossible. The lion blinked once, then gave a low exhale as if releasing something ancient. He turned toward the lioness, nudged her gently to stand. She rose, shaky but determined, and together they began to move, a slow, deliberate walk back toward the heart of the plains. Alex stood watching until the last trace of their golden forms disappeared into the grass. No part of him wanted to follow. Some bonds are meant to end where they began, under the open sky, without words, without claims. The younger ranger broke the silence. "You think they'll remember you again if you cross paths?" Alex smiled faintly, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "I think remembering isn't the right word," he said. "It's not memory, it's trust. And trust never dies out here. It just waits for its time to come back." The wind carried the scent of acacia and earth. Somewhere far ahead, a lion roared, deep, resonant, alive. Alex closed his eyes and let the sound wash through him. He had once saved a cub. Now a father had returned the favor, and in that sacred exchange, man and beast had rewritten the meaning of survival itself. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of sun and wind. Alex returned to base, his wounds cleaned and bandaged, his story already spreading among the rangers like a wildfire whispered through grass. Everyone wanted to hear the tale, how the lion had appeared from nowhere, how it had guided him to the wounded lioness, how it had remembered him after all these years. But for Alex, words were too small. What he had witnessed didn't fit into explanations or radio interviews. It belonged to something older, something primal, carved deep in the hidden pulse between man and beast. Each morning, before sunrise, he would climb the small wooden tower near the edge of the reserve and scan the horizon with his binoculars. The savanna stretched endlessly, golden and alive, shifting under the light, and though the lions had vanished into its vastness, he could still feel them somewhere out there, watching. The other rangers teased him gently. "You expect them to wave back?" one joked. Alex only smiled. "No," he said quietly. They already did. One afternoon, a call came through the comms. Movement detected near the watering hole. Alex's pulse quickened. He drove there alone, the jeep rattling over uneven ground. Dust coated his arms and face by the time he arrived, and there, in the shimmering heat, he saw them. The male stood tall on a low ridge, mane rippling in the wind, every inch the sovereign ruler of his world. Beside him, the lioness rested under a patch of acacia shade, her scar healing beautifully. For a long while, neither moved. They just existed, wild, free, whole. Alex didn't step out of the jeep. He knew better. Some moments are meant to be observed, not touched. He lifted his camera instead, not to film but to remember. Through the lens he caught something that made him freeze. The lion turned its head, and for a single heartbeat its gaze met his. Recognition flashed there, subtle, unspoken. Then the lion huffed, lowering its head slightly, as if granting acknowledgement once more. Alex lowered the camera, smiling. "You really don't forget, do you?" he murmured. The lioness rose slowly and walked toward the male, brushing against him as they turned together and disappeared once again into the tall grass, two golden ghosts swallowed by the wild. Alex stayed there long after they were gone. The savanna hummed softly, cicadas and wind weaving their endless song. He thought about the scar on the lion's shoulder, the one he had stitched years ago. It wasn't just a mark of injury, it was a signature of connection, proof that compassion, once given, leaves something eternal behind. As the sun began to fall, Alex felt something settle inside him. Not closure, but continuity. He wasn't the savior in this story. Not anymore. He was simply part of a greater rhythm. The silent promise that kindness given without demand would always find its way back. When he drove back toward base, the light turned copper and long shadows danced across the plains. He looked one last time at the open horizon and whispered to the wind, "Thank you." A lion's roar answered in the distance, deep, resonant, fading into the dusk. It wasn't a sound of farewell. It was an echo, a reminder that in the language of the wild, gratitude doesn't vanish. It lingers. And somewhere, far beyond sight, a scarred lion lifted his head to the wind, sensing the same bond reverberating across the plains. A bond that no time, distance, or species could ever erase. The encounter between man and lion didn't end on the plains. It began there. Within a week, the footage from Alex's camera reached the reserve's headquarters, where a young communications officer uploaded it to the park's official channel. The video wasn't dramatic. There's no battle, no chase, no cinematic angles. Just a single frame. A man kneeling beside a lioness, while a male lion stood guard in the golden light of dawn. It took less than 24 hours for the world to notice. The comments poured in from every corner of the globe. Proof that kindness is never forgotten. Animals remember love better than humans do. Maybe God sent that lion. Alex watched the responses with quiet disbelief. He hadn't filmed it for fame, only as a record, a memory too sacred to trust to words alone. But as the video spread, he realized it carried something universal, a small reminder that the line between species wasn't as wide as people like to think. News crews began to call. Documentaries reached out. A wildlife magazine offered to feature him on the cover. Alex declined most of it. He didn't want to be the story. The lions were. When a journalist finally caught up with him at the reserve gate, microphone in hand, she asked, "What do you think made the lion remember you after all this time?" Alex looked past her, toward the horizon. "I don't think it was memory," he said softly. "It was trust, and trust doesn't measure time." She paused, lowering her microphone. For once, she didn't have a follow-up. Later that week, Alex returned to the spot under the acacia tree. The ropes were gone, the dust smoothed by the wind. The savannah had erased all traces of the rescue, as it always did. Yet the silence there was different now. It wasn't empty. It was full of something unspoken. He sat down in the grass, letting the wind move through him. Somewhere in the distance, a roar echoed, faint, familiar, reassuring. He smiled. "Still watching me, huh?" he murmured. A pair of gazelles lifted their heads, then bounded away. The plains returned to stillness. Back at the station, his colleagues had pinned a newspaper clipping on the wall. The headline read, "The Lion Who Remembered." Below it, someone had written in pen, "Some debts are paid in silence." Alex read it every morning before starting his patrol. It reminded him why he had chosen this life, not for recognition, not for statistics or conservation reports, but for moments like that, when fear turned into trust, when instinct became grace. That evening, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the grasslands in amber and fire, Alex climbed the observation tower once more. He lifted his binoculars and scanned the distant ridges. For a moment, he thought he saw two golden figures moving in the light, one large, one smaller, walking side by side. He couldn't be sure. Distance played tricks with the eyes. But in his heart, he knew the family was whole again, the circle complete. The world had turned their story into a symbol of hope. For Alex, it was simpler than that. It was a quiet truth, that no act of compassion ever vanishes. It lingers in the air, in the soil, in the hearts of those who feel it, waiting to return when it's most needed. As night fell, Alex whispered into the wind, "Thank you for remembering." And far across the plains, unseen yet somehow near, a deep roar rolled through the darkness, not of warning, not of command, but of acknowledgement. The wild had spoken, and for once, humanity had listened. Months slipped quietly through the savannah, the heat softening into long evenings of gold and silence. Alex's life settled back into routine: dawn patrols, animal tracking, late-night calls from the observation post. Yet something inside him had shifted forever. He had seen lions before, hunted them from afar, studied their tracks, heard their calls echo through the night. But now every roar carried meaning. Every paw print in the dust felt like a signature, a quiet reminder of the pact that still bound him to the wild. One morning, as Alex checked the perimeter fence after a night storm, he noticed deep indentations near a shallow stream, heavy, deliberate prints. His chest tightened. They were unmistakable. The same male, the scarred king. Following the trail, he found tufts of tawny fur snagged on acacia thorns, and beneath a rocky ledge, faint traces of movement, as if a pride had rested there briefly. He knelt, touching the warm earth. "You're still around," he whispered. "Still watching." That afternoon, he logged the sighting into the reserve system, but he didn't add the emotional footnote that burned in his mind. He came back. In the following days, rangers began reporting sightings of a small pride traveling near the northern boundary. A dominant male, a lioness, and two young cubs. Alex's heart swelled. The cubs, her cubs, the circle was continuing. Driven by both duty and affection, he made a plan to track them at dusk, when the savannah softened under shadows. As he drove north, the air smelled of rain and wild sage, and the sky bled orange behind the mountains. Every turn of the wheel felt like returning to a story not yet finished. He parked the jeep under a wide marula tree and waited, letting the hum of insects and distant bird calls blend into the rhythm of his breath. The first to appear was the lioness. She moved gracefully through the tall grass, the faint mark of her healed wound barely visible under her golden coat. The male followed, majestic, calm, unhurried. Behind them, two small cubs stumbled awkwardly, their tiny roars swallowed by the evening wind. Alex couldn't help but smile. It was life repeating itself, raw, fearless, beautiful. He stayed still, not daring to interfere. The lioness paused at the water's edge, drinking slowly while the cubs played nearby, batting each other's tails and tumbling over roots. The male lifted his head and stared directly toward the jeep, eyes glowing amber in the fading light. For a long, endless moment, they simply looked at each other. No fear, no tension, only recognition. The lion gave a soft rumble, a sound Alex remembered well. It wasn't a threat. It was acknowledgement. Alex whispered, "I see you, my friend." He didn't raise his camera this time. Some memories didn't need proof. They only needed presence. As the night deepened, the pride began to move again, disappearing into the horizon with unhurried grace. Alex sat there long after they were gone, watching the stars blink to life over the plains. He realized then that their story, his and the lioness, wasn't about rescue or heroism. It was about understanding, about the invisible thread that tied them together in acts of trust that transcended fear and instinct. The cubs would grow, the lions would rule new territories, and someday, long after he was gone, their roars might still echo through the same fields where one man had once been tied to a tree and freed by a friend with golden eyes. He closed his notebook and leaned back against the jeep, whispering to the night, "That's enough, that's all it ever needed to be." And somewhere beyond the tall grass, carried on the breath of the wind, came a faint, familiar sound, a single deep roar, steady and true. It was the echo of a promise kept. The seasons changed again. The rains came and went, turning the dry plains into mirrors of water and green. Herds returned, birds filled the air with endless music, and through it all, Alex stayed, growing older, slower perhaps, but never weary of the life he had chosen. Visitors came to the reserve now with a new kind of reverence. They didn't ask to see the big five like tourists chasing a checklist. They came asking for the lion that remembered. The story had become legend, told around campfires, shared in classrooms, written into children's books. Sometimes Alex guided the tours himself. He never embellished it. He didn't need to. "It wasn't a miracle," he would say, his voice steady, his eyes distant. "It was gratitude, the kind that doesn't need words." He'd pause, letting the weight of that truth sink in. "And if you ever doubt that kindness matters," he'd add softly, "remember that somewhere out there, a lion once returned the favor." After each group left, he'd remain by the acacia tree where it all began, the same tree that once held him captive and later free. Its bark had grown smooth with time, the scars of rope long gone. But every time he touched it, he could almost feel the coarse fiber biting into his arms again, hear the low rumble of the lion's breath near his ear. One late evening, the sky painted in the soft amber of dying light, Alex climbed the ridge overlooking the valley. The wind carried the scent of rain and grass, and from far away a distant roar rolled through the air, deeper now, slower, like an echo aged by years. He smiled. "Still here," he whispered, "still watching." Below, movement caught his eye. A small pride crossing the plain golden silhouettes melting into the horizon. Among them walked a younger male, his mane still forming but his stride confident. Behind him a lioness with two cubs paused briefly and looked toward the ridge. Alex felt his chest tighten. The lineage lived on. He thought about the male lion who had saved him, the one with the scar on his shoulder, who had once chosen trust over instinct. That lion was gone now. Nature had its cycle. But his blood, his memory, his silent kindness still moved through the grasslands, embodied in the new generation. And perhaps, Alex thought, the cubs would inherit not only his strength, but his heart, that strange, unexplainable wisdom that once reached across the barrier of species to save a human life. When night fell completely, Alex lit a small campfire beside his jeep. The flames flickered softly against the vast darkness, the stars overhead bright as the eyes of 1,000 silent witnesses. He remembered, and so will I. Then he closed it and placed it carefully beside him. The fire crackled, throwing brief, golden light over his face. He wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. He knew what lived within it. The distant calls of lions echoed again, first one, then another, and then many, joining in a haunting, beautiful chorus. The sound wasn't sorrowful. It was eternal, a song of territory, of life, of remembrance. Alex leaned back, eyes half closed, listening to the wild's heartbeat. The night wrapped around him like an old friend. And somewhere out there, beyond the veil of shadow and wind, the descendants of a scarred lion roamed freely, guardians of a bond that time itself could not erase. The savannah slept under their watch, and so did the man who had once been saved by its king.